Lying about molest. Preventing and responding to false accusations of sex crimes. Lesson 4, talking to the police. The lesson notes are posted at shunketsu.wordpress.com. That's my blog. Go over there and you can see my references, you can see the links which I have put up, and you can use them for your further study, okay? So, there are 3 points of time when you might be talking to the police. First is when you are first accused. Next, if you actually are arrested. And when you are reporting your accuser for lying about molest, which is an offense under Section 182 of the Singapore Penal Code. Now, before we go any further, here are some disclaimers. What is shared here is information and opinion and should not be taken as legal advice. Next, the details here are specific to Singapore and are, to my knowledge, accurate as of the moment this lesson is created. Whatever I share here is based on my understanding of Singapore Police Force practices and procedures. If you're not from Singapore, what I share here may not be useful to you at all. Please discuss this matter with a lawyer from your country. Now, the details here are specific to my experience and my field of study, which is lying about molest, false accusations of sex crimes. If you need to interact with the Singapore Police Force over other matters, you should consult a lawyer on that topic directly. And if you have already been falsely accused, consult your lawyer immediately, because by then you will need legal advice specific for your situation. First, let me give you a brief outline of my own experience with the police on 19th of October 2020, so that you will understand what I speak out of personal experience and what I found out from talking to lawyers, ex-police, and other sources. So on 19th of October 2020, I called for police assistance over a case of wrongful confinement, which is an offense under Section 340 of the Singapore Penal Code. Now, sometime after being interviewed by the responding police, I was first informed that I was accused of carrying a baton, which as a civilian, I'm not permitted to. That's an offense. And after being searched for weapons, of outrage of modesty. Officers from the Serious Sexual Crimes Branch confirmed the accusation of molest after interviewing my accuser. They expressed the intent to arrest me, but changed their minds after taking my statement. So, when you are first accused, if you are a decent, law-abiding citizen, hearing the accusation can hit you hard. Fear, anger, betrayal, helplessness are common emotions. I know of one case where a man slugged out hours and hours of unpaid overtime to help a woman clear past a vital and important work hurdle. And within 3 hours of her clearing that work hurdle, she falsely accused him of molesting her. And it was in that physically and emotionally fatigued state that he faced being arrested by the police for some woman's flights of fiction. Whatever the situation is, you cannot let your emotions cause you to lose your cool and make mistakes, or to shock you into silence. A false accusation of molest or other sex crimes is an attempt to use the Singapore Police Force, the courts, and the rest of society to ruin your life. Therefore, you need to call upon all your courage, calm, and wisdom to navigate this treacherous situation. Now, here's an analogy from real life. I'm sure we've all heard of cases when parents had to drive their children to hospital, when their children were seriously injured or in some life-threatening medical emergency. Even though their driving skills may not have been at their best at that point of time because of the immense pressure of the moment, these parents were still able to get their children to hospital safely. Now, at that moment, the parents need to, number one, manage the immediate task at hand, right? Which is operating the vehicle, choosing the best routes, any immediate stopgap measures necessary, right? They need to navigate the external factors like the road conditions and the weather and other traffic. And of course, they need to focus on the overarching goal, which is to get the child to medical help. There are wrong things to avoid. Just as it is wrong for a woman in a secluded area to turn her back on a suspicious man and ignore him in hope that he will also ignore her in return, it is just as wrong for you to lose your cool, give full vent to your negative emotions, or let yourself be shocked or intimidated into silence. When you are first accused, what are your goals? Actually, it's very simple: to not be arrested. The problem: outrage of modesty is an arrestable offense. This means that the police on the scene do not need to first obtain a warrant of arrest before they can arrest you. I understand it to mean that the police on the scene are not even obligated to take a statement from you first before arresting you. They are perfectly within their rights to arrest you, detain you in the police lockup, and then take a statement from you on the matter at their convenience, not on yours. What might be the concerns of the police on the scene? Well, they're aware that being accused of any sex crime, whether truthfully or not, is an emotionally charged situation. The accused, if guilty, may seek to exact revenge upon the woman reporting him, if not immediately, then within the near future. The woman reporting him has a legitimate reason to fear for her safety and the safety of her family and her loved ones. If the accused is not guilty, he may still lose his temper at the dishonest woman for maliciously lying about him. And he may threaten her, or he may do something that she can report to the police as intimidation, harassment, intrusion, or other similar things. Therefore, it is easier for the police to just arrest the accused, let him cool down in the lockup, and thus remove any immediate problems that he may cause. So if you do not wish to be arrested, you have to show, not tell, the police that they can rely on you to not cause them further trouble and give them a greater mess to clean up. Yeah? So when you are first accused, speak calmly. Do not go too loud. Do not speak too fast. When teaching speech to kids in English class, I tell them that they have to let me hear from their speech where are all the commas and where are all the full stops. This takes practice and it's something that everyone should work on regardless. Next, watch your body language. Don't do wide, fast, agitated movements. Don't do that. Do not display your anger or your fear. Yes, so sit up straight. Do not cower, do not clench your jaw or your fists or anything like that. Do not hesitate over your answers. If you're innocent, well, the truth is your best defense. Don't wonder about how to prove your answers. Later on in this lesson, I will give you useful phrases to use. It will help you to be more certain and more precise in your replies to the questions from the interviewing officers. Don't hold back on your answers. I looked through case studies from Singapore. I noticed that it's quite common for the woman making the false accusations of sex crimes to actually be having an affair with the man she accused. So if you're having an affair with a married woman and she made a false accusation of molest because she wants to break up or because she is pissed off from you resigning from working for her, tell the police about the affair. Now is not the time to think about protecting her reputation or what her husband will think when he finds out. Look, if she made the false accusation against you, she is viciously lashing out at you to cause you maximum damage. Why think of still shielding her? While you're spending your next 24 to 48 hours freezing away in a police lockup, she could be cozying up to her husband, or her China nightclub manager boyfriend, or both, maybe even at the same time. I don't know what kind of kink she can go for, and telling them that they're the real heroes while you are the horrible, evil person. Don't hold back your answers, just tell them everything. Next, don't bring in irrelevant topics, okay? Don't say things like, oh, I'm happily married. Why would I do such a thing? Or my son-in-law is in the police force. I wouldn't do such things. One Saturday afternoon, I was at the Potong Pasir area to hunt down my favorite chocolate while slowly working my way through the crowd. I heard a small girl squeal, "Mommy, that old man squeezed me." Now, I wasn't looking that direction, so I didn't see who the girl was referring to. But at that exact moment, an elderly white-haired man started frantically shuffling away as quickly as his old legs could carry him. So that made it very, very obvious. So the mother easily caught up with him and confronted him. Now, he was very loud and abrasive in his denials and continued to try shuffling away. So I told the mother that if she wished to make a citizen's arrest, I would assist her. She agreed, and I myself confronted that old man. So he immediately stopped, this time, and agreed to wait for the police. Now I left to continue hunting for my chocolate. After the police arrived and I gave them what I know and what I saw, as well as my contact info if they need me for more information. Now, as I left, I distinctly remember that old man vehemently protesting his innocence with the police, saying that, "Oh, the people here know I'm very friendly with small children. My son-in-law is in the police force," and all that. So this is my personal opinion. My personal opinion is saying all the irrelevant things at that point of time makes you look guilty. It makes you look very guilty. It could only just make things worse for you. Big picture. Don't do stuff that the police present at the scene can construe to be challenging, defiant, or an attempt to be irritating. At all points in the process, the police present at the scene need to feel that they are in control of the situation. Next, you must remember that the police there are not your enemies. They are merely just one of the tools that your accuser is using against you. Save your anger for bringing her to justice later on. This is a picture of my threshold point. On 19th of October 2020, this is the location where I was interviewed by the police from the Serious Sexual Crimes Branch after they informed me of the accusation and their intent to arrest me. I was fortunate that they chose to take my statement first. They did not owe me that opportunity. So whatever advice I give here is not a theoretical thought experiment and all that. It's what I myself did. No matter how prepared I was, when it mattered, my heart was still pounding away and adrenaline was still coursing through my system. My hands were cold as if I could already feel the metallic handcuffs on my wrist. And I could still pull it off. being prepared makes a world of difference. Now, it could still have gone badly for me. All that I share here is not guaranteed to succeed. I cannot promise that if you do all the above, you won't be arrested at that moment. I can only tell you, not following what I've shared here makes it even more likely that you will be spending a long time in the police lockup. Let's take the worst possible case scenario. Let's say you did your best, but for some reason, the words kept coming out wrong. The officers questioning you were cold at the beginning of the interview, but their eyes have grown even colder still. They continued to speak as one of them brought out a pair of handcuffs, but the words sounded murky and indistinct, as if it was all the words are coming from underwater. Even the metallic click as the cuffs fastened around your wrist sounded unreal, as if you were watching all this happen to someone else, not you. Now, if at that exact moment a kind-hearted lawyer just happened to walk past and witness your arrest, now this lawyer doesn't know who you are. He doesn't know what you're accused of. He only knows that it's serious. And this lawyer doesn't know if you're guilty of what you're accused of, and therefore can't tell you if there are any exceptions or details that you can use to help with your case. What this lawyer does know is that from the shock, disbelief, and betrayal clearly written on your face, is that you are now clueless about what's going to happen next. And you're going to face police questioning blind, with no legal advice, no representation by a lawyer, or guidance with your answers. Now, if that lawyer gets 3 minutes to talk to you before you head off handcuffed to the police lockup, what will he or she tell you? What would that lawyer consider to be the most important information you need at that moment? I'm not a lawyer, but I'm guessing that that lawyer will want you to know your legal rights when arrested. So when we look at your legal rights in detail, please take the correct perspective. It's not a law professor lecturing a class, or a lawyer calmly behind his desk discussing such things with you over hot beverages. No, it's you with handcuffs around your wrist, the police just about to bundle you into the police vehicle to take you to the lockup, and your lawyer grabbing you by your shoulders, shaking you and saying, "For goodness sake, remember this." So let's take a step back. Now, if in spite of your best efforts, the police at the scene still decide to arrest you, your goals shift to don't say or do anything stupid. Once you're notified of the arrest, they place a hand on your person and verbally inform you of the arrest. You should seek immediate permission to notify your family or someone reliable. Depending on the time of the day, a text message would probably be the best. Indicate your full name and NRIC number and the police station you will be brought to. If the police do not inform you of the station, give your current location and your lawyer will know which station you will be detained at. Now, the problem, if you're not a lawyer or a career criminal, your first time facing all this will likely be distressing and frightening. Therefore, it is possible that the stress and fear may cause you to make mistakes. My goal here is to give you a good sense of what to expect and how to navigate this alien situation so that you will be able to regulate your own panic and other emotions. This is to help prevent you from making damaging mistakes with irreversible consequences. I want you to be able to say, "I know what's coming up. I know roughly how to handle it. I will make it through this. Now, here's a word to parents. When your children get to about 15 years old or so, you will have to decide if you want to have them educated in police arrest procedures so that they do not freak out should they be arrested. Now, your decision will largely depend on whether your children are the sort who behave themselves only because the thought of being arrested frightens them into behaving properly. At the very least, however, you should make them aware of the appropriate adults scheme. According to the Singapore Children's Society, the appropriate adults scheme for young suspects trains staff and volunteers and matches them to support young suspects who need to attend law enforcement interviews. These young suspects are under the age of 17 years old. These trained volunteers are referred to as appropriate adults. Now, these adults are trained to look for signs of emotional distress in the young suspect, to aid communication between the young suspect and the investigation officer, and to provide emotional support when necessary. Over in my lesson notes, I put a link to an article on that topic. Now, you may wish to tell your children that should they ever be arrested and be required to attend police interviews, that they should request for the presence and assistance of a trained volunteer under the appropriate adult scheme. Okay, so what do lawyers want you to know? Now, first, you cannot be held in custody for more than 48 hours without a charge or court order. The accused must be released after 48 hours unless the police have formally charged them with an offense or have been granted approval by the court. If you are charged, you will usually be released until your court hearing on condition of bail in the form of cash or personal property. However, if the offense is serious or you're considered a flight risk, you may be denied bail and detained until the hearing. You can question and object to any detainment longer than 48 hours. If the authorities wish to detain you for more than 48 hours, they will need to provide the court with a valid reason for doing so. While the court has the final say, you have the right to object and ask for an explanation as to why they're applying to hold you in custody. Now, this is taken from SingaporeCriminalDefenseLawyer.com. Link given on my blog in the lesson notes. Now, this is my comment. If you're arrested over a false molest accusation, you would already have been informed of the charge, so that particular right is less applicable in this situation. But the clock is ticking. The police have to either release you or have you formally charged in court, where you can choose to plead guilty or claim trial within 48 hours of the arrest. Now, why is this important to know? Because the entire process of being arrested is alien, confusing, and disorienting. People who are emotionally and mentally vulnerable may think the only way to get themselves out of this distress is to confess immediately to the crime they have been accused of. So knowing the time limit tells you that the waiting will not go on indefinitely. So, how do you deal with the waiting? Sleep. If you're alone in the lockup, find a spot to lie down and catch up on your rest. If you're left alone in the interview room, there should be a table there. Just lie across it or something. Get some sleep. Breathing exercises. Here is where knowing things like Qigong and other related breathing exercises will be a great help. If you don't know these, then at least look up the Huberman physiological sigh and practice it so that you can remember how to do it to control the anxiety of waiting. More importantly, inform the police immediately if during the waiting process you need medical attention, like you missed your medications or you have dizziness, headache, or weakness. Inform them immediately. The next right. You have a right not to say anything that could tend to show you are guilty of any crime. And you have to say anything that could tend to show that you're innocent of the offense for which you're being investigated, or any fact that supports a defense to such an offense. During the interrogation, if you don't state a fact that shows you are innocent or supports a defense, the court does not have to consider it seriously if you raise it only later. Finally, you're required to tell the police what you know of the facts of a suspected crime, unless those facts would tend to incriminate you. This is taken from SingaporeLegalAdvice.com. Now, that's a lot of words. What do the words mean? In my opinion, the words tell you that within the boundaries of truth, the police and the courts oblige you to put forth the strongest case in your defense. The corollary is if you do not present the best case for your innocence, the courts and the police are not obligated to build your defense for you. A sloppy or half-baked attempt to defend yourself only makes it harder for you to state your innocence later on. If you admit guilt to a crime you did not commit, whatever your excuses, the courts have no reason to consider that you might be innocent. Now, when it comes to other accusations of other crimes, putting forth the best defense possible based on the truth can get complicated. But when it comes to false accusations of molest and other sex crimes, the best defense is simple. You did not do it. Now, what if you don't believe you can give a solid defense of your innocence? Let's say the police claim they have witnesses and/or evidence against you. Well, during the trial, your lawyer will get to evaluate the evidence presented and cross-examine the witnesses brought against you. For you to be found guilty, the judge has to be satisfied beyond reasonable doubt that you committed the offense charged. This is from our law minister on the 25th of August, 2008. To keep you out of jail over a false accusation, your lawyer does not need to prove that you're innocent. He or she just needs to show that the case against you, based on the evidence and the witnesses presented, is not proven to the point of being beyond reasonable doubt. But if you immediately plead guilty to a crime you did not commit, you have no such opportunity for your lawyer to battle on your behalf. You move from there directly to sentencing. All you can do then is pray fervently that you are not punished too severely for a crime you did not commit. You would have cooperated with your accuser and made successful her attempt to ruin your life. All of that is big picture. The rubber really meets the road at the next point, which is at the cautioned statement. This is when you hear the police say to you something like, you have been charged with or informed that you may be prosecuted for the accusation. Do you want to say anything about the charge that was just read to you? If you keep quiet now about any fact or matter in your defense, and you reveal this fact or matter in your defense only at your trial, the judge may be less likely to believe you. This may have a bad effect on your case in court. Therefore, it may be better for you to mention such fact or matter now. If you wish to do so, what you say will be written down, read back to you for any mistakes to be corrected, and then signed by you. All right, this is taken from the smulexicon.com. This is your right. You have the right to rectify or delete any part of the statement before signing. The police will often require an arrested person to detail their account of an incident with a written statement, which must be truthful and in English. Importantly, you have the right to amend and delete any part of the statement before you sign it. And you can request for the statement to be video recorded instead. The police cannot force you to sign the statement until you are satisfied with its accuracy. If the accused does not speak English, it must be interpreted to them in a language that they understand. This is taken from SingaporeCriminalDefenseLawyer.com. Before giving the statement, are you experiencing dizziness, nausea, headache, or weakness? If so, request medical attention. When you are answering their questions, you can say, "Oh, I believe." You can preface your answers with "I believe" if you're not certain. Or you can state a fact and say, "I believe I have the records to verify this in my notes or my phone or my records." If you need to explain why you did something, you could say, "Oh, person X did A, B, and C, which is consistent with a person attempting to do something. Therefore, sometimes you could just simply say, "I do not know." Or you could say, "At that point of time, I had the impression that..." Such phrases are not secret ninja magic Jedi mind control techniques to hypnotize the police into complying with your wishes. No. But they do add clarity and precision to your answers to their questions. If you remember my point from lesson 1, the police will be very precise in their choice of words when communicating with each other. So if you too are precise and clear in your choice of words, it can only help you. Because you're obligated to give the best defense you have against the accusation, you are given the right to rectify or delete any part of the statement before signing until it accurately reflects what you want to say to the police. What's the corollary? You have to sign the statement. When you sign the statement, you're telling the police, "This is what I want to say on this matter. I sign here on this statement to show that I stand by this and will take responsibility for my account." And if you refuse to sign the statement, you are clearly showing the police that whatever you have said in the statement is a joke. And now's not the time for jokes. Now, it becomes much simpler to state your defense and point the police to evidence for your innocence if you have followed what was taught in lessons 2 and 3. You have already identified your accuser as someone who trends towards dishonesty, right? You recognize the triggers and you prepared your records in advance against that possibility. Now, when the officers from the Serious Sexual Crimes Unit inform you of the accusation, they are supposed to give you the date, time, and place the woman claims you molested her. So for my case, the officers did not give me the date, time, and place at all. So from that, I inferred that my accuser had claimed that I repeatedly molested her over an extended period of time. Claiming that I carry a baton, a weapon with me, suggests that she accused me either of violence or threatening violence. So this allowed me to choose what direction to take and thus what evidence and records to show the officer interviewing me over the false molest accusation. So present all the evidence you have available when you claim your innocence. For example, if your accuser claims she never had any romantic interest in you at all, yet you were harassing her, such chat records might be useful to show that her accusation was obviously false. If you do not have the supporting evidence immediately on hand, you can say in your statement, "I have records as evidence for my account of the events." If you're not certain, you can say, "I believe I have records as evidence for my account of the events." Now, when you read through that statement again before signing, check to make sure that the important details are included. It is your legal right to insist that the interrogation officer include the details you consider important to your case. So this is my experience on the 16th of July 2021. After months of delay and trying to ignore me, the investigation squad finally arranged to meet me and take my statement. This is after I reported my accuser for falsely making a molest accusation against me. As I said, an offense under Section 182 of the Singapore Penal Code. So that investigation squad tried to delay, they tried to ignore me, and they failed. I will talk more about that in lesson 5. So they finally arranged to meet me and take my statement. Here's the interesting bit. So during the interview, person A asked absolutely no questions about the matters involved with the lying about molest case on 19th of October 2020. He then claimed that there was no accusation of molest made that night. When I pointed out that the police present and later the Serious Sexual Crimes Branch officers told me of the accusation, this person ignored that and left the interview room, just walked out. Now, person B, the original investigation officer of the accusation made against me, was present and typing down the answers to the questions that person A asked. She then presented the statement I was to sign, but it totally left out the crucial details that showed an accusation of molest was made that night. So I insisted that those details be included before I signed the statement, and she did so. I think it was very obvious that person A slanted the interview questions in order to present my report as a personal grudge against my accuser and not an actual crime. Now, if the police want to mishandle your case, there's a limit to how much you can actually do about it. But I'll talk more about this in lesson 5. Lie detector test. All right. These points are taken from SingaporeLegalAdvice.com. First, the results of lie detector tests are not admissible in court as evidence. Next, that website says, if you're asked to submit to a polygraph test, the good news is that the police clearly haven't decided to recommend prosecution yet. You have the right to refuse the test, but should make that decision only after consulting with a criminal lawyer. Now, what I like about this website is that the writer actually gives you some sense of what is going on, how you could interpret the police bringing up the polygraph test, and why you may decide one way or another. Now, all these are complicated topics. I've only just barely scratched the surface. If any of these topics interest you, find a lawyer and pay him or her to explain things to you. Don't give any room to the mindset some people have of trying to weasel out information from lawyers for free. Okay? It's a lousy mentality and one that can work against you should life's storms hit you and you need real legal advice. Reporting the 182. Making a false police report about molest or other sex crimes is a criminal offense, one that can lead to a jail term for the dishonest woman. Why toy around with half measures instead of trying to put that criminal in jail? Now, in my experience, the police not interested in taking action over false accusations of sex crimes. If you leave it to them to decide whether or not to look into the crime against you, you will be sorely disappointed. If you choose not to take action to pursue justice for yourself, you would have shown your accuser that you are prey. You would have shown dishonest women that they can get away with lying about molest and other sex crimes. And you would have shown yourself that you do not deserve justice. And if after you choose not to take action to pursue justice for yourself, if after that you fall into depression, alcoholism, or other self-esteem problems, don't come looking to me for sympathy, you'll get none. My experience reporting the 182 was deeply frustrating because I got to see the police deliberately mishandle the case. But I could face up to my conscience and know that I did all that I knew to do to pursue justice for myself. I have no regrets over putting in all that time and effort to report the 182. But what do I regret? I regret not installing a phone call recording app earlier. You need an app that automatically records every incoming call you receive. Why? Because when the police call you to talk about the case, they will identify themselves at the beginning of the call. If you need to activate the app yourself for every individual call, number one, you may just forget. Number two, you might miss recording the caller identifying himself or herself as from the Singapore Police Force. In my case, the officers from that investigation squad were deliberately giving me misinformation in order to mishandle my case. So if I got the app earlier, I would have been able to gather more evidence about how widespread the mishandling was. The next thing I regret, not making the police report on the 182 immediately. I actually thought, let them finish up investigating the case against me first. Then after that, I can bring up a case of the false accusations. That was dumb. I regret waiting. I now realize that number one, you have the right to report the 182. Next, reporting the 182 allows you to take the initiative in presenting your evidence of the crime the dishonest woman committed against you. Next, reporting the 182 does not hurt your case when it comes to the molest accusation. At the very least, you get to put forth evidence that would help you defend against the false accusation. And of course, delays only give your accuser time to refine her story against you, and it gives her time for more evidence in your favor, such as CCTV footage, to get accidentally deleted, damaged, or lost. My next regret, not getting the name of the officer from the Serious Sexual Crimes Branch that informed me of the molest accusation and interviewed me on the night of 19th of October 2020. People from the investigation squad tried to convince me the molest accusation did not happen in the first place. The very presence of the officers from the Serious Sexual Crimes Branch that night shows that the claim is a lie. Blatant lie. Whenever you report a crime, the more relevant details you can provide the police, the easier it is for them to investigate your case, and this applies to every crime you report to the police. Once you see the 182 being set up, you should be trying to remember and record every possible detail, and later on, write down as many of those details as possible. Why? Because even if the Singapore Police Force sincerely wants to investigate your case, it will take time. And you weaken your own case by getting details wrong or forgetting them. Do you make the police report online or report in person at the neighborhood police post or at the police station? Now, reporting in person is better if you do not have the ability to express yourself properly. A sincere police officer will ask questions to prompt you on details that he or she thinks ought to be included in the report. But when it comes to a false accusation of molest, they may tell you to wait until the investigations on the accusation are completed first. But if you delay and wait, number one, you may be too tired to pursue the case then. And number two, you may forget crucial details that support your case. So, reporting online. It depends on your ability to express yourself clearly and concisely in English. Now, I prefer to report online because it gives me more control over the process. Should you choose to report online, you go over to the Singapore Police Force website. This is what it looks like. You see the section called e-services, which I've circled out. That's where you go to next. Then on the e-services page, you will find the link to click for making a police report. I've circled it out for you. After that, you will need to log in using your SingPass. Then you will be redirected to another page. And this page will look something like this. After you fill in the form, you will begin the actual process of making the report. That web page should look something like this. Now, as you can see, there's a character limit, 4,000 characters. You need to type out everything on a word processor first. Then after that, you can cut and paste into this form. Likewise, prepare all your evidence before you start this process. Make sure your evidence fits the format and file size accepted by the website. Now, in your report, what should you include? What should you bring up? Well, for an offense under Section 182 of the Singapore Penal Code, the prosecution must establish that the accused person gave information to a public servant. Such information was false. The accused person knew or believed that such information was false, and the accused person intended or knew it to be likely that the information would be acted upon by the public servant in the manner contemplated by the provision. So, when we break that down, the accused person gave information to a public servant. This means you should include the police report number and the names of the interviewing officers if possible. Such information was false. This is where you include the evidence for your innocence. The accused person knew or believed that such information was false. Usually this is the same as the above. But sometimes, immediately after making the accusation, the dishonest woman makes a critical slip-up. The accused person intended or knew it to be likely that the information would be acted upon by the public servant in a manner contemplated by the provision. That, to me, is actually quite obvious. Okay? That's quite straightforward. So now, your evidence, make sure your evidence is clearly labeled. Now, highlight critical parts of the evidence and refer to them in your report. For example, this person confined me in office premises against my will. SMS records 3B shows that when I tried to use the emergency door button to leave the premises, it failed. Now, evidence can include chat record interactions with the dishonest woman. So if you take the case of Nur Shafiqah Jasmi, all right, the police seized her mobile phone for investigations, which eventually revealed numerous text messages showing that they were having an affair. This case is a policewoman who falsely accused another policeman of molesting her. Notice that she herself did not delete the chat records that actually proved that she was lying. She kept the chat records in her phone. And the case of Sumaini, a maid who had an affair with her employer's husband and had consensual sex with him, on 2 occasions later lied to the police, claiming that the man had raped her. The deputy public prosecutor said that after recording Sumaini's statement, the police checked her mobile phone and discovered text messages exchanged on Facebook Messenger between the maid and her employer's husband. The police seized her mobile phone for investigations, which eventually revealed numerous text messages showing that they were having an affair. Be alert to slip-ups from the dishonest woman immediately after the accusation. Sometimes she will give you useful evidence served up on a platter. I know of this guy who was working in a tuition center when he was accused of molesting the lady boss. It was utterly ridiculous. He narrowly avoided being arrested on the spot by officers from the Serious Sexual Crimes Branch, and he was warned by the police never to return to that center again. Yet the very next day, that lady boss had her staff text him to demand that he return to work. So he asked whoever was communicating with him if the demand that he return to work was, number one, official policy of the tuition center. That means they allow suspected sex crime offenders access to children and maybe even prey on them. And he asked if that demand was explicitly stated by the lady boss and her husband, who was a director of the tuition center. The center immediately caught on to his intent and the direction he tried to lead the conversation. And therefore, they boldly decided to ignore his questions. But the very fact that the very woman who accused him of molesting her wanted him to continue working for her shows that her accusations were false. Now, records of such interactions are evidence you should submit to the police as part of your report. Now, after you have submitted the report, you should receive an email notification that will look something like this. When you're reporting the 182, the principle to follow is make it as easy as possible for a sincere police officer to see what is going on and decide to commence investigations. Be organized and be concise. Don't make the police wonder what you mean or, irritate them with careless mistakes in your details. No. Now, what if the police officers who look at your police report are not sincere? That's what we will look at in lesson 5. But for now, let's take a step back and look at the big picture. If you have ever been falsely accused of outrage of modesty, if a woman has made you her target for lying about molest, evil is no longer an abstract concept or a philosophical question. It's now upfront and personal. Because of how I positioned my life before, I generally lived my life crime-free. That's what happens when you study the traits of Davoian people. But ever since I was falsely accused of molest and almost arrested for it, well, now evil has a name, wickedness has a face. It's personal now. How a man relates with evil shows you what he is made of. How he relates with evil. From there you can perceive the measure of a man. If he practices evil, well, he's a criminal and an abuser. If he ignores evil and does nothing, for example, a husband who knows that his wife falsely accused another man of molest, tried to get him arrested, and used threats of legal action and such to silence him from exposing her crimes. If this husband knows all this and does nothing, it could be because he himself practices evil. Then that makes them the most ideal couple, a match made in heaven. Or he himself has no moral spine of his own, so he does not care. Or he is a coward who knows what is right, but has no guts to do it. Now, would you dare trust such a person in anything important, such as work, friendship, or the like? Right? If there is such a husband, I cannot imagine what kind of woman would want his sperm inside her to make her pregnant. I cannot imagine. Now, if a man surrenders to evil, in this case, right? We're talking about somebody who's falsely accused of molest and yet does not seek justice against the dishonest woman who tried to ruin his life. Well, then he's prey. He's a victim. I don't believe his parents expended all their blood, sweat, and tears to bring him into this world and raise him just so that he can cower in fear and surrender to wickedness. Can such a person ever think of getting married and raising a family? I mean, if he won't even stand up for himself, what makes you think he has the courage and strength to stand up for his wife and children? And finally, a man who stands up against evil for himself and for those around him. Such a man, I salute. When it comes to standing up against evil, be prudent, be astute, be wise, yes, but be brave. Be the sort of person that your parents will be proud of, that your wife and children know will protect them. One thing I noticed about people with no moral spine or who are cowards is that they tend to discourage others from seeking justice. But if you yourself stand up against evil, you may create a ripple effect that can help turn our society to a place that you want your wife and your children to live in. Because society can go two ways. Number one, it can be indifferent to wickedness and dishonesty. In such a situation, then evil will thrive. Or society can stand up for justice. Which way will your society go? A lot of that depends on whether you will stand up against evil or not. This is lesson 4. By now, you will have a very good idea of what I'm trying to do with all my lessons here. So if what I share, what I teach here resonates with you, please share these lessons, the video, the notes on my blog with your friends, your family, and associates. All these lessons are free of charge. I'm not charging any money for all this. I have my job, I have work that pays my bills. I'm good. So I created all these lessons as my way of giving back to society, as contributing to community. Help me to help more people. Now, if you are a lawyer, an ex-policeman, or have other professional expertise to share, and you wish to collaborate with me, please contact me at the email address given. I look forward to hearing from you. Okay, so the next lesson is a continuation on this topic, talking to the police. However, it looks at if they choose not to be honest. See you at lesson 5.